Lots of words get a turn in the spotlight when talking about leadership and organizational success. I could make a long list. The first two that came to my mind as I was preparing this morning were transparency and vulnerability. These are words that 10 years ago, no one would have connected to leadership success, but today are common in our vernacular. My guest today says the word we should focus on and strive for is love. In fact, she says it's the word that will transform our workplaces in the most powerfully positive way. Welcome to another episode of the Remarkable Leadership Podcast, where we are helping leaders like you grow personally and professionally to lead more effectively, make a bigger positive difference for their teams, organizations, and the world. And that's why I'm so glad you were here. If you're listening to this podcast, you could have joined us for this live. Well, you really can't because you can't go in the Wayback Machine. But what you could do is join us in the future for live episodes, but you need to know when they were happening. And so if you were to join our Facebook or LinkedIn groups, you'd get all the inside scoop about the show, as well as knowing when I'm going to be live streaming so you could join us at those times. Just join our Facebook or LinkedIn groups. As I said, just go to remarkablepodcast.com/Facebook or remarkablepodcast.com/LinkedIn to get all of the inside scoop so you can join us live in the future. Today's episode is brought to you by my latest book, Flexible Leadership, Navigate Uncertainty and Lead with Confidence. It's time to realize that styles can get in our way and that following our strengths might not always be the best approach. In a world more complex and uncertain than ever, leaders need a new perspective and a new set of tools to create great results for their organizations and team members. That's what Flexible Leadership provides you. Learn more and order your copy today at remarkablepodcast.com/flexible. And with that, I'm going to bring in our guest. And so my guest today is Kelly Winegarden Hall. She is a leadership expert and business strategist who helps individuals and organizations move from surviving to thriving. As founder of the Live Large, LARGE, she brings 30 years of experience leading diverse teams and transforming struggling businesses into high-performing, self-directing organizations. Her new book, which is why she's here, is titled Love Works, Transforming the Workplace with Purpose and Authenticity. And so, Kelly, now you can add that you were a guest on the Remarkable Leadership Podcast to your bio. Probably not, but welcome. I'm glad that you're here.
I'm very grateful to be here. So thanks for the opportunity.
So in the book, you unpack a little bit of your journey, but I always like to I usually start there in these conversations because I want the audience to know a little bit about who you are. So give us the cliff notes of your journey. I'm guessing when you were 8 or 10, you didn't necessarily expect that you would have done all that you've done, including writing a book. So tell us just a little bit about the journey that gets you to this point today.
Sure. I grew up in the middle of America, the heart of the heartland in Iowa, in a very vibrant farming community called Deep River. And we were encouraged from a very young age to try a little bit of everything. I mean, when you live in a small community, people really do help each other and play together and support each other in a very big way. That's had a lasting effect on me because I think I've always brought that sense of community and that high expectation of people to love your neighbor and care about the person next door in everything I've ever done. Those strong roots led me to university and graduate school education and marketing and finance. And that started taking me around the world. And so I moved from Iowa to California, worked for a mining company, and then on to 18 years at Avery Dennison, which was a really great place to took training seriously and really saw people and had their own DEI initiatives to get more women into leadership roles. Eventually, I was very curious about private equity and having ownership. And so I went into a smaller company to lead their commercial organization. That was a wonderful experience that led me to wanting to be an entrepreneur. My entrepreneurial dreams were quashed a bit when I got a great opportunity to go live in the Netherlands and lead a team in the circular economy space. And that was a transformative thing for me, not only the great opportunity to live in another part of the world and experience other cultures, but we implemented a self-directed structure as a team, and it had a profound impact on my faith in redistributing power and activating the gifts and the talent of every single person around us and really treating everyone like an adult at work. So it became time to become a storyteller, to sort of spread the word that there are other ways to do things that are way more powerful than what we've been living within for a long, long time.
So inside baseball, Kelly, I grew up on a farm in Michigan and also worked in California after college. How about that? So
brother from another mother.
You said you became wanted to become a storyteller, which to me, having read the book, that's clearly what this book is in part. So what led you specifically then to write the book?
Specifically, I had a metastatic breast cancer diagnosis about 4 years ago. And when you get that terrible news from doctor, you sort of want to know the diagnosis and the prognosis, whether that's months or years or decades. And so, you think, leave home from that very scary news thinking that your holidays and memories are going to be really tight for the rest of the time you've got left here. But I found my way to stories that were recommended by my community about many, many people who've overcome a stage 4 diagnosis. And the power of stories to give somebody hope, to give somebody a path to a better outcome, to give somebody other tools that other people have already learned through is remarkable. And so I thought, after I resolved my own cancer diagnosis, that I would write a book about eliminating disease by eliminating the dis-ease. But I was headed to a writer's boot camp and had a fortunate, fateful lunch with a friend who had a big conversation with me about corporate culture and the power of culture and how important culture is. And I went into that boot camp and realized, oh, I've been given my life for a reason. I've been given my crazy career and all my leadership opportunities because they could be helpful and useful to other people. And really getting rid of the dis-ease at work, because I'm tired of the fear and anxiety and abuse of power inside of our companies when the potential exists for people to be having a much better impact and a much better time.
Well, that's what this book does. And I can tell all of you, of course, obviously the reason that we're having this conversation is because Kelly wrote the book. And we're going to talk about that a little bit more. But I want to get to the heart of the matter. I hinted at it or teased it in the open, if you will. And it's the first word in the title of the book. The word is love. So why love? I mean, why the word love? And then I'm going to ask a follow-up, but just start there.
Yeah, love is one of the most loaded words in the whole wide world. And that's from person to person and culture to culture. Love means a lot of things. But for me, love is very simple. It is our essential life force. It is the magic and the miracles that are powering our breath and our heartbeat. And they're activated, love is activated in relationships. And if you pause, you know the difference between the way a relationship feels when there's flow and connection and trust and compassion and curiosity. The love is really strong in places where we let it go and let it flow. And you also feel when it's pinched off or restricted or replaced by judgment or things that just don't feel good. That's not love. So more and more that we can embrace love as this really abundant, flowing, never-ending thing that is powering all of us, it's easy to tap into it. It's easy to share it. It's easy to enable it. It's easy to allow it. And everything gets a little easier when you have loving relationships.
I think all of us would agree with that. And yet there's a lot of people who are listening who are still saying, yeah, Kelly, but at work? So let's talk about it a little bit more from the work perspective. But actually, let's do it this way. You've been sharing this message and you've been out talking about the book with organizations, with leaders for some time now. My question is this: what's the pushback that you get? Maybe not eventually when you're done having a conversation, but what's the initial pushback that you get about that word in the context of work or the workplace?
I think there's a resistance to talking about love. I've been told not to use the word many times. And so that made me want to use it even more, right? Because it's seen as soft. It makes you vulnerable. It requires openness. It requires vulnerability. And that's not comfortable until it is. But that transition also is the shift between using power to control and direct and drive and manage, which is very egocentric, to realizing I only know what I know. And the faster we can put together what you all know, the infinite possibilities we can create together start coming to the table. And it's no mistake that everyone likes their own ideas the most. And when you create the spaces and the safety and hold the space as a leader for every adult to bring their full selves and their talent and their curiosities and their interests to the table, the possibilities to drive better service, more effective innovation, better staff retention, better results, the business case for love is clear.
Well, that's actually where I wanted to go next. You just hinted at that, the business case, because you said, and I think everyone listening would agree, that love is kind of this soft idea. And yet you just finished that conversation with hard business realities, building a business case. So you say that love is a disruptor. So let's continue that thinking about the business case for this. If you can help people get past the initial squishiness of that idea.
Yeah, I can give you one good example, and it has to do with changing the way that we hire people. So, in most of my career, when there was a job requisition approved and an opening, a couple of people would take responsibility, an HR person, a manager, maybe their boss, for interviewing a slate of candidates, picking someone and telling the team, surprise, like, here's your new colleague. And that is only as so effective. But at Niaga, we implemented a practice of involving the people in the team to hire their teammates. They're adults. They know way better than I do about the specific nature of the projects and the gaps in their team and the talent that is required to get to where we want to be faster. And so we went through a process of screening 75 to 100 candidates for every job, creating a slate of candidates that was half men and half women, and then putting all of them through the exact same process that about anywhere from 10 to 16 of our teammates participated in. And eventually it was the responsibility of the hiring team to choose their teammate. But that person comes into the organization knowing most of the people they're ever going to work with and knowing if that's going to be a good fit for them. But we also have remarkable visibility from many different people's eyeballs and lenses about what they're like, what they care about. Will they fit? Are they bright? Does their experience match what we need right now? And we ended up having much better candidates who came into an organization with half the onboarding process complete.
Yeah, I love that. It's an investment that you made, and you outlined that whole story and that process in the book. And it was one of the things that I highlighted as I was reading the book, and I'm glad that you brought that up. But I want to go back earlier in the book, and really earlier in the thinking about how we put love into the workplace. And you told me a little bit more about this before we started our conversation. There's a part of one chapter where you say, I've got 18 ways to bring love to work. And I know you've got a project you're trying to do. I'll let you talk about that in a second, but we don't have time, Kelly, for you to talk about 18 ways to bring love to work. But I'd like you to give us a couple of examples, because here's why. Because number one, people are listening and they're still sort of saying, well, I kind of get what Kelly's thinking, but man, I'm still kind of stuck on that word a little bit. And I think when you give people tangible examples, they're going to say, yeah, that's really good. I can do that. That doesn't feel weird. Like maybe I'm still feeling at this moment about that 4-letter word that starts with L. So give us a couple of these examples and then tell me about what you're trying to accomplish beyond that.
Yeah, they're actually small and large gestures all throughout the day to make sure people feel seen, heard, protected, provided for, cared for. And it's little things like making eye contact in the stairwell instead of just buzzing to your next meeting. Like, take a minute to look and smile at the people around you. Management by walking around. You know, I've had the pleasure of a lot of great leaders in the companies I worked in where there are just those certain managers who took the time to get to know the people on the factory floor and to say thank you and to ask questions, to host roundtables when you have a policy change or an idea, to actually say, be vulnerable enough to say, I have this idea. There's this thing I think we need to do or thing we need to change. How would that affect you? Do you have a better idea? Could you let me know what that's going to feel like from your shoes and from your desk? And gathering the dissent and gathering the information before you make a decision that affects other people. That's a loving thing to do. It's also loving to be honest and to help people that are in a job that they're struggling with and is not a good fit for them to get to know what's going on behind the scenes. It just takes a little time and a little effort, but you might think you know. But if you actually ask, you might not know that their wife asked them for a divorce yesterday or that their kids are struggling with a drug addiction and they're distracted for a reason that has nothing to do with work. But you get to hold that space for them so that they'll come back strong when it's time.
Another one of the 18 things you said in there, and for those of you that are watching, you see I'm holding up my phone. You simply said, put your phone down, which is something we all could do better at, not just at work, but how often do you all go to a restaurant? And I find myself, especially when I'm traveling for business, by eating by myself, which is the worst part, one of the two worst things about traveling for business. And if you look around and see people at tables together that are not actually interacting,
I have a funny story about that.
Interesting and sad. It's interesting and sad. Go ahead.
Oh, just last week, I had the good fortune of spending 2 hours with somebody that I really admire. And we went to a restaurant where phones were forbidden. You could not have your phone on the counter or on the table. And if you got a phone call, you had to leave the restaurant to take it. And the rules were really clear. They sent them to you ahead of time. And so here I am having a conversation with someone I was excited to spend time with. And we were telling each other stories. But we wanted to grab our phones and show each other pictures and videos, which takes time to scroll through and find the pictures and the videos. And because we couldn't use our phones, we had to be like, well, I want to show you that, but I can't. So you had to keep talking instead. And when I really look back at how many times we wanted to reach for our phones and take time to scroll to find it instead of staying present with each other, it was remarkable. It makes me want to have a restaurant tell everybody that they can't have their phones inside, because our dialogue was way richer when we had to stay present with each other.
Even if we didn't see the picture, right?
Right.
Even if we didn't see the picture. I love that. So you told me before we went live, you said, Kevin, I'm doing something on my blog and can I talk about it? I'm like, yeah, it's exactly related to this point. So tell everybody how you want their help.
All right. On my website at www.kellyweinegardenhall.com, there's a tab called Love at Work. And that is where you'll find the 18 examples from chapter 4 in my book. But I'm going to expand that blog to 100 using other people's stories and other people's examples. So if you have an idea for a way that you've experienced loving leadership or the way you practice loving leadership, something that you learned about, share it so we can expand that list to 100 or more and really help each other continue to drive loving leadership into the world.
Kelly Winegarden Hall.com. That was on the screen a second ago, but many of you are listening, so that will be in the show notes for you as well. So we've been talking, Kelly, about bringing love to work. And the book, in some ways, the subtitle of the book starts with the words transforming the workplace, which to me means culture, right? Mm-hmm. The culture to me is simply the way we do things around here. And you're suggesting the way we do things around here ought to have more love, be more love infused. So what would you say to those leaders thinking about their culture in this as we're having this conversation? What are your thoughts about the connection between love and sort of aspirational culture?
I would like for more leaders to think about their job as a conductor of their symphony. And you got to put the right people in every seat in order to have the very best, most complicated music played every day. But the best music is going to happen when people are putting their love through their instrument, when they're really there with care, with excellence, with attention and focus, and part of a team where they're all interconnected. And so I think when we stop thinking about the power and the control of a conductor, but the responsibility for holding that talent and holding that space and making it safe and powerful for people to bring their gifts for their audience, for their customers, for their communities. That really shifts your responsibility from being the all-knowing expert who's in control of all these people to the very powerful force that sees them, understands them, supports them, encourages them, gives them new music to play, challenges them, stretches them. But we're all here to make this magic together. We're all adults. We all get to be here with 24 hours a day at a time.
So you've said, like, I don't know, 7 times so far. I haven't counted exactly, but you keep saying we're all adults. We're all adults at work.
Yeah.
Certainly that is sort of profoundly true. Why is it that you keep emphasizing that? How is that connected to your overall thinking here?
Back to the power of stories. Our programming begins the minute we're born with how the world works and who's who and this parent-child relationship. And there's always this sense that some people are powerful and some people aren't in any space, in any organization, in any family, in any religion. There's big people and little people. And I think that we're all deeply programmed with believing that some people are more powerful and more important than us. And that is really a sad and unfortunate story because everyone is at the pinnacle of their power on any given day. We all have the same life force. We all have about the same amount of health and the same amount of years that we get to be here in these bodies and in this crazy life. And so it took me personally a long time to really reconsider power and my power. I was climbing that ladder, having more responsibility, having more money, having more power, and aware there were people that still had more that I looked up to and people I was responsible for that like I was more important than. And I was so embarrassed by that at this point in my life because I don't believe it at all anymore. And I believe that I have the same breaths in a day as Donald Trump or Putin or whoever else looks more powerful on paper. But when you take back your power and you realize that, and you start helping other people spread their wings and to come into their full adulthood and to show up with a voice, with responsibility for that voice, with energy, with gifts, the more and more that you encourage people to be in power, empowered in their power, the more that they start realizing it is possible to do better, to do more, to stretch, to grow. And that is easiest when you feel like the people around you who have been recognized or gifted with the perception power put their hands on your back and encourage you to lean in and encourage you to see and stretch, not to panic, not to be tossed into situations where you're going to be eaten alive, but to take calculated risks and to get back up when you fall.
So you said something a second ago. You used the phrase "pinnacle of power," which you talk about in the book, and you can see I put it on the screen here. Say a little bit more about what you mean by that, because you've been talking about us rethinking our view of power, or at least how you've rethought your view of power. What do you mean by the pinnacle of power?
The idea of the pinnacle of power comes from one of my friends, Sean Kennedy. And he shocked all of us when we were kind of sharing around a table what we were grateful for and what we were looking forward to at a New Year's Eve party. And he sort of confidently sat up and said he's excited about the year ahead because he's in the pinnacle of his power with all of the education he's ever had, all experience, health, vibrancy, appreciation for the world, like a chance to make a difference. And we all like grabbed our phones and took a note because that sounded so cool. We had to sit with and think about what that really meant. But as I've been thinking more about organizations and intergenerational dynamics and how you develop young people as fast as possible, if you start seeing that on any given day, we are where we are, the present's the only thing that's real anyway, that everybody has the gifts that they're here with today. You can get more education, you can get more experience, you can learn more things, you can stand up after failures. But today, you're as good as you're ever going to be today. The more that we really see that in each other, every generation holds wisdom, every person holds gifts, and a curiosity about how to tap into that and how to encourage it and how to get the most out of people, to welcome them as an adult with 24 hours a day, to help them see themselves the gifts that they have is a remarkable opportunity.
We're talking with Kelly Winegarden Hall, the author of the new book, Love Works, Transforming the Workplace with Purpose and Authenticity. And I appreciate everything that you've shared. I have a few more things I want to ask you, but before I go into the last sort of phase of our conversation, Kelly, I'm curious, is there something I didn't ask that you wish I would have? Or is there one other thing that you really want to make sure we talk about?
One of the things that people ask me is, how do I get started? If I want to head down a path of being a more loving leader or really affecting the talent and the energy inside my organization, what should I do? And the best advice I can give you is to pause. Busy executives don't like to pause. They don't like to sit quietly. They feel like space in the calendar is wasteful. And I would like to ask people to reconsider that, because a simple practice of pausing every morning, but even throughout the day, to tap into, how am I doing? Am I comfortable? Am I stretched? Am I listening? Am I present? Am I fully here in this moment? You can't give anyone the best of you if you're not good in your own skin and standing on your own 2 feet. And so the more that you get inside of yourself and you find, I'm good, I'm grounded, I'm happy, I'm aware. And then you go, okay, what do people need from me? What does the organization need from me? What do I need from them? Just this practice of pausing to make sure that you are heading into your day with an open mind and an open heart, looking for the power of the system instead of the power within. It's been one of the best decisions I've ever made to create that space for myself. And if I could help everyone else just find that 5 or 10 minutes every day, it might change the world.
I don't think there's any question that it would. And you said there's several things we can do with that pause, and every one of them makes us more effective, more alive, more engaged. And I could go on and on, right? So I love that. There are so many things, Kelly, that we could have talked about that are in this book, and unfortunately, I know going in that we'll never get to all of those things. But hopefully, we've helped people to really get a sense of what you're trying for us all to hear. But I want people to have a little bit more sense of you too before we go. So I'm curious, Kelly, what do you do for fun?
I love to entertain and to host a good party and to use that for charitable reasons where possible. So I learned in June that my local independent cinema, it's called Film Scene, just as an example, got all their NEA funding cut. So we had an outdoor movie night at my home to raise money to replace those funds. And so being able to do something I love, like entertaining and hosting guests and having a good time, combined with using that to help others, just feels really good. And so I want to continue to do more of that.
I love that. The only thing you knew I was going to ask you is coming now. What are you reading?
I have been reading a book called Careless People, and it is a book based on an insider from Facebook who sort of shared about the growth of Facebook and what it was like to be inside of that amazing company for a good solid 7 or 8 years. And it's alarming and scary and shocking, but I also think we need to deal with the truth and the reality of what people are experiencing inside of these very powerful organizations. So I was grateful for the woman who showed the courage to tell those stories, and I think more people learn through them.
Careless People. That will be in the show notes, as well as more information about Kelly's book, Love Works. Kelly, where do you want to point people in general? You've already told them you want them to go to your blog at kellyweingarden.com so that they can suggest ways to show love at work or to bring their love to work. But what else do you want to do to connect? Where else can people connect with you? What do you want to tell people before we start to wrap up?
Yeah, I'm pretty active on LinkedIn and I enjoy reading other people's content there. And so that's a very easy place to find me, to connect and link in and message there. I'm also, my website is good. I'm open to more projects at the current time in my life. So if you are part of a team or part of a company that is in distress or experiencing a toxic culture or difficult integration of an acquisition, I would be more than happy to consider helping you. So I'll put that out there too.
KellyWinegarden.com. That's where you can find more about Kelly. Before we go, The question that I have for all of you who are listening or watching is this: now what? This is our weekly or every episodic moment to do what Kelly suggested, which is to pause. Because it's one thing to listen to this for 30 minutes and to take stuff in and say, man, that was really good. Man, she's really smart. That's a really good idea. I really learned something. All of that's good. But what are you going to do with it? Because until you take action on it, it's really not all that valuable. I've been spending some time at my in-laws' home as we are cleaning it out. And I can tell you that they collected a lot of stuff. So do all of us collect a lot of stuff. And those of you that are watching and listening to podcasts are collecting a lot of stuff. What are you doing with the stuff you're collecting? What action will you take as a result? Because it's this question that activates all of the rest of what we've talked about today. How are you going to bring love into your work today, even if you don't use that word? How are you going to start to influence others through your example? It's the answer to that question that makes the real difference. And I hope is the takeaway for you from our conversation. Kelly, thank you for being here. It was a pleasure to spend 30 some minutes with you, both before we went live and after. And thanks so much for being here.
Thanks for having me. Good luck to everybody.
So there you go, everybody. Another episode of the Remarkable Leadership Podcast is in the books. But that simply means in a few days, no longer than a week, there'll be another episode, because every week there's a new episode for you. So make sure you're subscribed wherever you watch so you don't miss that episode. And if you are a subscriber, make sure you tell somebody else so they can join us next week for another episode of the Remarkable Leadership Podcast.